Welcome to Real Leaders with Roshini, the podcast with real talk, real questions, real insight, and we hope real inspiration. For real. We are on the road today at Cambria Gallery in downtown Minneapolis. My guest is Senator Tina Smith, United States Senator from the state of Minnesota. Thanks for being with me today.
Well, thank you, Roshini. I'm so happy to have this conversation with you.
Well, you have such a busy schedule. Let's start with that. How much did your life change when you went from being a lieutenant governor to a United States Senator?
Sure. Well, when I was lieutenant governor, I had a really busy schedule. I did a lot. I really tried to turn that job into something that was really going to be meaningful. And so I was used to having a pretty packed schedule. And of course, when I was lieutenant governor, my schedule was sort of it was related in many ways to the governor's schedule, kind of like the yin and the yang, or, just very related to what he was doing. But then I hit the Senate. And of course, I had 72 hours basically to prepare for that role. It wasn't like I had spent the last 2 years getting a plan. And it was just incredible, the intensity of it. Trying to do so much right away. There would be some days when I had 17 different things on my calendar. And the thinking that you have to do to stay on top of it and stay in the moment of that.
Do you compartmentalize? How do you do it?
It's like, the thing that I really focus on is I'm sitting down to talk to somebody that it's really important to them, that they know that I am hearing them and that I am there for them. And so I'm very much in the moment of it. And then I have people who help me keep notes and remember exactly what happened and what the right follow-up is going to be. And it's sort of like moving from one thing to the next. Some days you get at the end and you go, no, wait a minute. What was I doing at 7:30 in the morning?
Right. So the multitasking, you have a team and that's helpful.
Right.
But you still do have to keep a lot of content in your head.
You do. You have to keep a lot of content in your head. And now that I've been at this in the Senate for about almost 20 months or so, I keep that. I remember more, I know more, and that's really helpful. I can relate it to personal experiences more, personal experiences of others as well as my own, and it helps to kind of turn it into a story.
All right, let's flash back to your earlier life. You were born in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which you don't hear that a lot.
That's right.
In Minnesota. And I find really fascinating that you worked on the Trans-Alaskan Pipeline in Alaska. What was that like, and what did you do?
Well, so as you said, I was born in New Mexico, and then when I was about 12, my whole family moved to Anchorage, Alaska, and I loved living in Alaska. My family then moved down to the San Francisco Bay Area when I was just at the beginning of my junior year in high school. And I thought that was like the worst thing that had ever happened to me, leaving Alaska and moving to San Francisco. So I went back up in the summer times to work. And the summer before I went off to college, I got a job on the pipeline. So imagine this. I'm 18 years old. Sometimes I wonder what my parents were thinking because they were in San Francisco. But I I flew to Fairbanks, Alaska, and I joined the union because they were union jobs, which was great because I got great pay. And then my first job was cleaning rooms in a construction camp.
Totally glamorous
job. And that was probably the worst job I've ever had. And then I got reassigned to working in the kitchens, which I liked much better. I was a bull cook in the kitchens that served all the workers. And so I was allowed to I wasn't allowed to touch anything that was either hot or sharp. I was at the lowest level. It was called a bull cook.
And so lettuce was in your
Yes,
purview.
I could rip lettuce. I mopped a lot of floors. I schlepped big cartons of milk around and put out all the pickles and then cleaned up the pickles at the end, that kind of thing.
Senator Smith, how has that job affected the rest of your life?
Well, I think in one way, let me just say, I was able to do that job. That job allowed me to help pay for my college education. The first year I went off to Stanford University, and it helped pay for the first year of Stanford University. Having the experience of being around all those people from all over the country that were taking advantage of this opportunity to pay for their families had a big impact on me. The other thing, and this really relates as much to that Alaska job as growing up in New Mexico, I quickly learned in my life that not everybody in the world is just like me. In fact, everybody's life experiences is different, and that makes the world interesting and exciting and not scary. And to me, that is sort of a fundamental thing. When I was growing up in Santa Fe, New Mexico, most of the kids that I went to elementary school were Hispanic kids that spoke Spanish at home. Their families had been in New Mexico for 500 years. And so I was not the majority. I was the one who was different.
How's your Spanish?
I know a lot of place names. I'm decent with nouns, but I'm not that good at sentences.
So when you have a little extra time, maybe you can brush up on that.
In fact, before I was joining the Senate, before I knew I was going to be in the Senate, I had gotten one of these, Babel or one of these language. I was working on my Spanish, but unfortunately, that went out the window.
Let's talk about healthcare and some of the different parts of the state of Minnesota which are thriving, and specifically Rochester and the Destination Medical Center. That is something that people in Rochester definitely know about. More and more people in the state of Minnesota, and indeed the United States, are coming to know about. You were a leader of that project in Rochester for a while before you became senator. What do you want people to know about Destination Medical Center?
Well, Destination Medical Center is an effort to create growth and opportunity in Rochester around the work of the Mayo Clinic. The idea is to turn Rochester into America's center for health and wellness, and with Mayo Clinic at its core and at its center. The question is, how do you do that? That sounds great, but what does that really mean? And the strategy that we got passed when I was chief of staff for the governor, was to say, let's put together a partnership between the city of Rochester and the county and the Mayo Clinic and the state of Minnesota, and let's to really make this work. And what I think is important for people to know about it is that it is working. It is creating jobs. It is creating economic opportunity in the Rochester area. The second thing I want people to know about it, because this is really important to me, is that not a penny of that money that is coming from the state of Minnesota is going to Mayo Clinic. It's all going to build out the publicly owned infrastructure and assets of Rochester. And that's the way it should be with these partnerships. Mayo Clinic needs to pay in for what they're building, and the rest of us should pay in for what is owned by the public.
What do you think would be the biggest surprise that people were, if they were to learn about Tina Smith?
Oh gosh, I don't know. It's I think about who I am as a person. I think about the varied jobs that I've been able to have in my life, and people have gotten to know that about me a little bit. I think people are starting to understand that I'm somebody that works really hard, that I listen really hard. But one of the things that has been a challenge for me is really letting people into my life, I guess, in a way. It probably has to do with all those years that I was a behind the scenes person. I didn't really think that people were that interested in me as a person. It was really just about getting my work done. So I think maybe in a way that sounds a little bit like shyness. And maybe that's something that people don't really appreciate about me.
So you do have to get over shyness to be a United States Senator.
I think you do. You have to, because people want to know who you are. And finding ways of sharing that is really important. And here's an example of it. But part of it is also my mother over years, my good Midwestern populist mother sort of saying over and over again, kind of get over yourself. This isn't about you. And so, but here's an example of that. I've done a lot of work on mental health and really trying to break down some of the discrimination that people who have mental health challenges, people with mental illness feel. And I've been doing this work for quite a long time, worked on it in the Senate. And so I had to come to grips that if I was able to share with people my own experiences battling depression when I was younger, that would help people to that would make it easier for others to share their own experiences and to realize that it was okay to get help. So that's what I mean by this. It
less
wasn't
of a stigma.
Yes,
less
exactly,
taboo.
Exactly. Less of a taboo, and that it was important that I shared my own experience as a way of helping to break that down. It wasn't an easy thing for me to do because I was sort of feeling like, well, why does anybody really care about my own experience? But I found out that they did, and that helped me a lot.
So when I think about all the things you have to do and all the places you have to go, is there a place that you go to just get away from it all?
Sure. Well, So first thing you need to know is that I've been married to Archie Smith for 36 years, for 35 years. I keep adding.
That deserves a round of applause.
I keep adding a year. Archie thinks that's hysterical that I keep adding a year to how long we've been married. 35 years now. And so now we're at this stage in our life. Our kids are grown. They both are married. No grandchildren yet. No pressure, kids. And what we love to do is just go off to the North Shore. We love to hike. He'll make me a cup of coffee in the morning. We'll read a little bit. We'll go for a hike, maybe cook dinner. Maybe we'll make a puzzle and just like totally tune out. That's what I love to do when I'm just chilling.
Right. And that you probably need that because there's so much noise in your life.
Yeah, that's right. And you know how it is when you are so busy on it all the time, you're just going, and then you have to dial it back and you can't right away. Do you ever have that happen to you?
Yes, exactly. That's why long weekends are better for me than a full week or two on vacation. So I read an article about the 1980, one of the presidential debates between Ronald Reagan and President Jimmy Carter. And I don't know that they could have even imagined what debates would become like in the 2000s and how cantankerous and how accusatory they are. But I don't know if there's a dialing back of it. You know, social media is involved now. How do you handle this world of politics?
Well, I try to, when I get personally attacked or people say things about me that are really awful, I just know that that's not really about me. They don't know me. They don't know who I am. It's not personal. And keeping that sense of boundary is really important, and I try really hard to do that. And then so that's the first thing. The second thing is that we live in a world where there's sort of this tit for tat, like you hit me, I'm going to hit you harder, and you go back and forth, and that's what escalates this, right? And I try not to be a part of that. I try to go back to talking about the people whose lives are being impacted by the policies that we're moving forward and the work that we're trying to do. And that keeps me grounded. And I know it sounds a little bit Pollyanna-ish, but you know, for God's sakes, I'm 61 years old. I don't need to be doing this. I'm doing it because I have a sense of purpose about it. And I'm just not going to...
you could just go to the North Shore and hang out with Archie.
I know, I could just...
I mean, seriously.
I'm just not going to buy into that. And that doesn't mean I'm not willing to defend myself when I need to. You have to do that in politics and in life. You can't let other people bully you. You have to stand up for yourself. But there's a difference between standing up for yourself and standing up for what you believe in and letting yourself be drawn down into the ridiculousness of the modern debate.
You've had some decades to build a thick skin. What is your advice to young people as they face the world?
Well, I would say that you need to own who you are. Nobody is perfect. I'm not perfect. Don't try to be perfect, but don't let other people define who you are. You need to me, that is really about owning your power as a human being, to think what you think and to do what you do. And that's the first thing. The second thing is just fundamentally, it's what my mother taught me and my father. Treat everybody else like you'd like to be treated. Don't judge a book by its cover. Don't think you know somebody just because of how they look or where they're standing or
where they were born.
You have an opportunity to get to know that person and then figure out who they are.
If you could have dinner with anyone, dead or alive, who would that be?
Well, the first thing I think of is, in a few days, I'm having lunch with Walter Mondale. And so the first thing that I think of is, man, how lucky am I to have that friendship and that relationship at this stage in my life and at this stage in his life. To have that is such a gift. Otherwise, I think, I don't know, Paul McCartney, maybe.
That could be really fun.
I was always a Paul girl.
Yes, I was too.
Were you?
I am too, yeah. Well, it's interesting because...
Or Lizzo. I'm pretty into Lizzo these days,
Are you really?
Too, right?
Excellent. I know there's like a social media...
So, my imagination is like going now.
Lizzo
right?
and Paul McCartney.
Right.
Same
Exactly.
table. What would you eat?
Oh, I would eat Thai food for sure.
I'm sure that's what Sir McCartney would want. Is there a song that is the theme song of Tina Smith's life?
Well, it's funny because we were just talking about Lizzo, and all last year when I was in the midst of this big hairy campaign that I hadn't really had a chance to plan for my special election last year, my theme song was Lizzo, Good as Hell. So it's that kind of like, don't let anyone get in your way. Just keep on pushing through, get together with your friends and make it fun. Have a good time. Hair back, check your nails.
I like it. Yeah. Nails always need to look good, right? So lots of things in our modern culture that even I, and I'm not very young, but as a young girl could never have imagined. The Me Too movement, some of the different, the historic 2018 election of so many different kinds of people to the United States Congress, which was long overdue. Do you think that sexual politics will ever be the same, or do you think what happened with the Me Too movement has helped our country, hurt our country, or something else?
I hope that sexual politics and politics generally won't be the same again. Change doesn't happen in a straight line. It happens in zigs and zags, and sometimes you think you're making progress and you fall back, and then sometimes the leaps forward that you make in change are messy, and you don't get it all right all the time. But the fundamental idea that women and men, wherever they work, whoever they are, should be treated with dignity and respect and shouldn't have to put up with actions that marginalize them or undercut them is really fundamental to our humanity. And, I think about this. I graduated from business school in 1984. This was when all of the women graduating from business school, we literally dressed like men. We wore navy blue suits and those little red foulard ties, and because we just tried to blend in.
Yeah, horrendous pictures as we look back in time at some of those. Not of you in particular, but as groups.
No, the early 80s were not kind to us in looking from the perspective of 2019. But I think, I was blessed. I never was in a work situation where anybody treated me badly or put me in a terrible spot. But I also worked for myself a lot of the time. I kept a lot of autonomy, and not everybody has that opportunity. And the things that we used to put up with is just a matter of course. I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing that we don't have to, that's changing.
All right, let's wind down with a little bit of a fire round. Okay. And I never really know what's going to come out of my mouth, so I'll pre-apologize. All right, let's start with your favorite food.
Favorite food is lamb chops and garlic bread and an arugula salad.
Your favorite child?
I have 2 children, now 4, that I love equally.
Good answer. Good answer. All right. What about your favorite destination anywhere in the world?
My favorite destination anywhere in the world. I'm going to take Minnesota out of the picture because just as I have no favorite child, I have no favorite place in Minnesota. If Minnesota is not in the picture, my favorite destination in the world is my father's straw bale cabin in the mountains of northern New Mexico.
Sounds beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Lovely. I bet the sunrises and sunsets are gorgeous.
They are lovely. And there's some trout in the stream, too.
Favorite curse word? And you don't have to say it unless you want to.
I think if I said it, I would be bleeped. But
no, you won't. This is a podcast. Oh. You can say it. Or
I would just,
it.
Yeah, I'll just say my favorite. Right now, my favorite curse word is that's bullshit.
We can live with that. And I like that you say it as a phrase.
Yes.
Yeah. And does that ever come up in debate? Has it come up in a debate?
I have not. So far, I have avoided swearing in debates, though I must say that my very first national TV appearance, once I became senator, I ended up getting bleeped because I said ass. Yeah. We didn't know whether to be proud or ashamed. So we,
you know, I think that's memorable.
Yeah,
you may have been one of the first to have been
and I was
bleeped.
quoting somebody else, and so I felt I should have gotten a little bit of a benefit there. But
right,
the censors didn't care. Right, exactly.
You were being totally accurate. All right, let's jump ahead to the end of your tenure, whenever that is, as United States Senator from the state of Minnesota. What do you hope people remember you for? I
hope people will say that I represented them with respect, and that I lifted up people's personal dignity, and that they could be proud that I spoke for that I spoke for them in Minnesota. I also hope that they will say that thanks to the work that I did, they have universal access to health care for every single person as a fundamental human right. And I hope that they say that I helped to reduce the terrible burden of college debt, and that people who have diabetes are not having to impoverish themselves to pay for the insulin that they need to stay alive.
You've come a long way from that Alaskan pipeline.
That's right.
Thank you for spending some time with us.
Thanks, Roshini. It was really fun to talk with you.
Until next time, keep it real.